I'd like to call a meeting to order tonight. Betsy, will you call the roll, please?
I note that all board members are in attendance this evening.
Okay, thank you. And next item is approval of agenda. Need a motion to approve our agenda for this evening as presented in your board packet. Thanks, Steve. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And next item, 4.1, the opportunity for visitors to address the board on any agenda topic. Should be on any agenda topic. Yes, I'm sorry, it is on any agenda topic. So, anybody wish to address the board on the agenda this evening? Okay. We'll move along to our consent agenda. We just have one thing on the consent agenda tonight, 5.2. Are there any questions, comments about that? If not, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented in the board packet tonight. Move. Thank you, John. Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. Betsy, call the roll, please.
Harley.
Yes.
Clutter.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Kopp.
Yes.
Eustace.
Yes. Move on to new business. Student demographics. I think, Jill?
Yeah, I'm going to start off. We kind of want to give you a snapshot of demographics, and this is effective as November 1st. So we've got enrollment by building. We have the number of IEP students, and we have free and reduced lunch. We also have ELL, which is the English language learner count, the homeless count, and the languages spoken. And when we talk about homeless, we're talking about families that live in motels. They're either doubled up. It could be a foster situation, or it's unaccompanied youth, meaning that they typically have left the house.
Why is it a foster situation? Homeless.
The first year of a foster family, according to the law, is always considered homeless the first year.
Right?
Would that be grandparents too?
Could be grandparents, could be aunts and uncles. There are several of our high school students that don't live with any relative. They've completely moved out. So the number of families in motels have really gone up. So
Please see it.
like in Motel 6, we have several families.
I had asked if there's any emancipated minors in high school.
Oh, okay.
Not that-
Very few.
Yeah,
I
very
think
few.
they're.
So I kind of wanted just to share with you, because when you keep looking at the languages, by the time you hit high school, the list keeps going and going. So, but these are all the languages that are spoken. A lot of the ELL, it varies per building on all the different languages that are spoken. So I just kind of wanted to give you a snapshot of our demographics and the numbers, because this goes into a lot of what the principals do on a daily basis, meeting the needs of students.
Some of these English as a second language students are eligible for one-on-one tutors, right?
Correct, ELL.
And so every single one of these ELLs, do they each of them have a tutor?
No, we try to group them and provide those services. They have to qualify though. They have to take a test yearly in order to qualify for those services. I mean, many of them don't need those services because they're proficient. So, I just kind of wanted to give you a snapshot of all the things that we have, because I don't think sometimes we think of all Chatham looks like this, but we do. So
I'm not sure I know where all these languages are.
I couldn't even pronounce all of them.
Very, very complex.
Very, very complex.
Do you have any trend data as compared to last year? Is this a big change?
No.
It's a big change at the elementary. We have more and more adoptions.
Yeah. And I think we're going to continue to get that.
We had 5 new students move in just at the high school level who speak a variety of languages. And back to Lisa's question regarding the one-on-one content area tutoring, when applicable, we try to provide that, but we have been able to enroll them in a CRC course that is specifically geared with our academic interventionist to provide that service in a small group setting.
Not because they might need it academically, but they need it because of the language barrier?
Yeah, they can still learn, it's just
More of
if
a support.
they don't know the language, of course, there's gaps. I mean, they really pick up quickly in math because it's more universal than English. District-wide, we've had a lot of meetings with ELL, and Jill's helped to lead those to provide the supports because we're seeing more and more in Chatham.
Do we have an EM help teacher? No.
You have to have so many of a certain language in order to have that, and we're not there yet. So then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the principals. I want to say before I start that they're a little nervous. They've done a great job of collaborating. I will say that we've gotten better in the past year of looking at the data, and we've gotten our RTI, our problem-solving teams off the ground, and we'll keep refining that over and over and getting better at looking at the academics and social and emotional support for what our student population needs. And then we continue to ask the question, so you need to know that we ask this question a lot, you know, what is the success of our literacy initiative? And so we keep asking that, and I would tell you that after today's meeting, we talked about that we need probably 2 more years, and a lot of that is because the phonology is just getting started. So that program is getting started, but systemically, the kids are being able to use those reading strategies very, I mean, so the coaches are seeing that we need to start differentiating even more at the guided reading table and beyond. So
You said we need 2 more years, 2 more years.
well, for the phonology, to look at the success of that, because that was the second part of that literacy initiative, is that we were going to implement that. So I mean, they're just, and that is going beautifully. I mean, elementary principals will touch on that, but I mean, so I just, you need to know that we do ask that question about our investment and the return. So
Can I piggyback on that? Jill? I think when we talked about that, too, it's saying we need 2 more years in terms of like student data, because I know as principals, we've all talked about what we've seen instructionally going in the classroom and providing feedback to teachers. We do see the difference instructionally in students who are engaged in the conversations that they're having at the guided reading table or during shared reading.
You're also seeing gains on reading actively.
Absolutely. So there are, but in terms of when we start seeing the data in our local assessments, I think the more foundation that students have over the next few years, that's what we're really going to see.
and it'll feed right into the Common Core too as well. And when we look at data, I mean, we're having a training for 30 people on Wednesday with the NWEA to look at how we can utilize that data even more.
NWEA.
That's the math testing that grades 4 through 9 all take, and then some 10th graders take that for reading and math, that universal screener 3 times a year. It's costly, but very good information.
And also, can I ask the middle school, high school how the literacy program affects you guys?
Sure.
Yeah, ours is, we went through, we had the direct instructors trained 2 years ago. Last year was the assign and apply folks. So now everybody, other than the new ones, have been through the training. We really feel like we're going to make movements this year because we have a new instructional coach that is pretty dynamic, and we didn't necessarily have that last year, the year before, who is getting involved. You'll see it in the plan, getting involved with those departments individually, and to show them what, review what we've done and where we need to go with it, and far more work into the classroom with them on lessons and how to produce the lesson, to go over literacy strategies, and help them to come up with the tools that they can use. We have so many teachers now. It's funny, you walk into rooms that they're using the strategies, but we're not quite there yet because we stumbled. But with the individual we have there now, I think you see it's all kind of coming together toward the end of the year. But it's funny to watch the kids, because I think up through our juniors now have been exposed to it since the middle school. And you mentioned the strategies, and they know what's going on. And,
So I
that's
think
been a
Miss
big one.
James. This-
Well,
yeah,
I
don't
hope
have to
so.
talk to me.
But if you look at, I mean, one of the measuring sticks would be to look at what our universal screener says. And as Mrs. Cox and I kind of, and Mr. Lee looked at where we were at with the number of students who were below grade level with our fall of 2011 and then retesting in the spring of 2012 and then retesting again in the fall, I was initially, oh my gosh, I don't know what we're going to see, but we saw trends that show a reduction in the number of readers that are below grade level. And to me, yeah, is it all related to the literacy initiative? We can't be for sure, but systemically, since we've been doing it for 3-4 years now, I would like to believe that it is a correlation. And the data shows that just that we have fewer readers below grade level. That's a big plus.
One of the things that we're doing too, because we are seeing more and more kids coming to the middle school who are proficient in those strategies, so we're doing some pre-assessments so that those students who are already proficient, instead of doing more of those skill-based activities, they are doing more Common Core kinds of activities, more enrichment types of things during their independent practice and so forth. And so beyond getting more work with nonfiction and then at the level that they are capable of reading, we're also extending those activities as well. So that's where I think it's working much better. We're also kind of pulling off the phonology. We have a much more concerted effort on vocabulary too, which we found a lot of our kids, even in the results for math, reading comprehension wasn't their lowest area, but vocabulary was. So now we have a systemic materials and plan in place that we are utilizing vocabulary program throughout 4th grade on up. So
Is it an actual vocabulary program?
yes, yes. So that's good.
And I was really pleased to see it because I knew that the literacy program was, really the way to go, but of course at the time, having older children, I thought, they're not going to get the benefit of this, and so that's why I asked, because now that it's been long enough where the older kids would start to see.
Well, I didn't want to get sidetracked on
Sorry.
literacy, but I do want to throw out there that we do ask that question often. So if the principals want to start with recent successes, you guys can take turns. It's your show now.
Well, the one thing we did is, as we brainstormed, we came up with our 5, which was really interesting to see as the years go by. It used to be so different for each school, but when we brainstormed, that was a big aha, that we all have the same 5 recent success. And that, to me, that speaks loud. We started off with looking at what administratively we went through this summer to help prepare us and guide us to be stronger at what we were doing with evaluation and the success with all that. Jill's talked about that and appreciate that plug she's given all of us for that. But most excitedly, I think we've heard a little bit about literacy here, but numeracy might be something we want to start talking about a little bit here, because that's the new thing we're really looking forward to seeing, where this leadership team guides our focus with numeracy this year.
And I think it's exciting with the numeracy that, with Tracy Kimball leading the charge and facilitating that, it's really been something that is a grade 2 through 12 effort with everyone represented at the table at this point in time. And looking at Common Core and aligning, trying to figure out pacing charts and where are we now, where do we want to be. They're actually getting ready to, as a team, they're getting ready to share just this week with the rest of their grade levels, what they've accomplished so far, and what's to come for the teachers with the numeracy initiative as well.
Are they looking at the numeracy independent of the math series we have?
We're looking at it independently as in terms of where are we as far as what is our curriculum now?
Mm-hmm.
What is Common Core saying?
And
where the gaps, where we're overlapping.
Right.
And then looking at our series as our resource. What does it have for us, and where might we need to
Horizontally and vertically. I've asked Tracy to present what she's doing at the December board meeting, because she should be almost finished with the paper audit. So that she's gonna give you, but there's some awesome curriculum documents that.
You know, only having one numeracy coach in a district this size, I think could be complicated, but I think it's been an advantage in that she's the one person
Yep.
aligning everything.
Right.
And through the entire district, I mean, we all know what they're doing because she's very organized. She's incredible. And the teachers in each building, I believe, know what's going on with the other buildings. I know it's a very tough job for her, but it really, that one individual kind of keeps things all steady for everybody. Everybody knows where everybody's at. And I think it's made a world of difference.
Well,
in
that's
how
what's
we're
been
operating.
nice, is I don't know how many times I've said to her, you see what's going on in 4th grade, you see where they're going in the middle school, help us connect that dot at the intermediate school from 5th and 6th grade. And she sees that whole global picture, which is wonderful. Her math knowledge that she brings to the table just facilitates the conversation so smoothly. It's been terrific.
Do you anticipate a big change in what is presented in math?
A lot of things are pushed down.
Yes.
Before, if you would look at any standardized math curriculum, there's a little plateau until you actually hit algebra. And I think we've decided 2nd grade is probably going to have the biggest changes to begin with. And not only just the curriculum, but also implementing and integrating practice standards. So those standards are across the, not only what it is, but how they're going to teach it as well.
And the next grade that gets it the most, the next is 6th grade. There's a lot of, she said there's a lot of stress on, you gotta give up this and a lot of this is being pushed down. A lot of algebra.
But still being developmentally appropriate for the kids? Because of course standards are more developmentally appropriate.
Yeah.
And the thing we see is, and I think it's because it speaks highly of what the teachers have went through with the literacy initiative. They're trying to grab a hold of her now, and they want the professional development, and it's like, no, you gotta, we gotta get this audit accomplished first. They're not afraid of that train the trainer model. They really understand it, and they really see what it feels like to have a system come through, and the benefits is just amazing. So they really are grabbing her.
She's trying, and that's the hard part, is she's trying to do all of that because she's trying to coach them individually when they ask questions. She doesn't just, let it go. She'll go find them a resource, or I've seen her in a meeting with teachers and they're aligning curriculum and looking at the Common Core and determining where their gaps are, and then she jumps up to her computer and says, oh, well, here's what this means, because the teacher says, I don't know what that means. I don't know what they're asking students to do. And she'll jump up and show them and talk to them about a sample lesson. But Tammy alluded to the fact that we've got 2nd through 12th grade, and that was a pretty concerted effort. We planned not to have pre-K, kindergarten, and 1st grade in this because of the phonology adoption, and we knew that we would add them back in later, and that was really good. In hindsight, that was a really good decision because they're so overwhelmed with all the phonology this year, and they're clearly, and I talked to, in fact, it was some of Kim's teachers that, thank you for doing that. We really wanted to jump on board and be part of that core, math team, but we realize now why you guys did that, because we know that arc time will come and we'll join later, but right now we're just so overwhelmed with all of the great material they have for phonology. So that's why we have those leaders at 2 through 12 at this point, and then we'll add in later when we're ready, the pre-K, K, and 1.
The phonology goes through what level?
Right now it goes through 1st grade, for us, through 1st grade, but then we will, the
Kindergarten
same
and 1st
thing,
grade?
yes. And then the same thing we will add 2nd, and then for those that need it in 3rd, more as an intervention. But we, again, held off on 2nd grade because we knew that we wanted to start math at that point. So they'll get some training then in 12 years.
Extend into vocabulary.
Yeah, the phonology coming up, the vocabulary coming down.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that, I mean.
So as you get more experts up here, then they can help support those, and same with, the phonology going up, they can support their peers, at other grade levels. So it's actually a really nice system, the way it's been designed, because you're creating those internal experts who are right there next door to somebody. If, a 1st grade teacher has become a master of phonology, then she can help support his or her colleague at the 2nd grade when they're ready to adopt. So I think it'll work out very well.
And another one of our highlights we all totally agreed on was the weekly professional development time that we have. We wouldn't be where we are at without having that time weekly to provide these professional development meetings opportunity for those teams to collaborate and learn, you know, what's coming next, practice model with the coaches. Just so value that time, and it's utilized above and beyond what we maybe even anticipated how well received it's been.
Just to offer a question. RTI, I know I get it with our, especially at the K-4 level, I think it has been great to see how much we've refined our process in terms of our problem-solving team and having interventions in place for students, both at a level where specialists come in for those interventions, but also supporting teachers on what interventions they can provide for students in the classroom as well. You know, especially in the area of reading. I know we don't have those special supports right now for math, but teachers are talking amongst themselves and trying to brainstorm and problem solve for interventions that they can use during win time for math, what they're seeing and what our students' needs are. You know, and just as we push the PBIS piece across the district, being able to see how we're having that universal expectation, and as students get older, they're still carrying that with them, and seeing how we might be able to support students on a social emotional and behavioral end as well.
You know, so one of those things is just systemic, and you look at, we just talked about the literacy initiative and the kids that learn those strategies at the lower levels, and as they come to the high school, they really kind of know them, and it's a matter of us just reviewing them with them and continually to use them on a regular basis. It's the same with the PBIS. You know, this, as designed, the high school was last to come on board with PBIS, and now we're pretty much there. We developed our matrix. We've developed the cool tools. Now it's time to start teaching the kids. We'll use different terminology with them and so on, but it's basically the same structure. But again, it's the same thing that they've been exposed to since way down the elementaries, and just that idea that what we're doing is so systemic throughout the district that it starts to implement itself without as much to do or whatever you might have if you were doing it piecemeal. And so it's gone over really well at the high school. We've modeled a couple different things. We actually used one this morning as we were preparing for our assembly, and that just helped the kids understand that this is what the expectation is when you go into an assembly. And you can just know, I mean, you know, I wasn't in the classroom, I'm on the intercom doing this, but you just know that they've heard this before and they know what it means to be respectful. You know, it's one of the big three. So it just helps that we just keep this as a process that goes all the way through, and I think it just makes it easy for everybody, more successful for everybody.
And the piece that's so critical to follow up with is looking at the data. Our SAP core team or problem-solving team is able to meet on Fridays every morning. There's 17 folks that sit in a room and talk about the behavioral and social emotional needs. Each week we bring up the students and identify what interventions were used, how we can continue to support. And the same with our RTI core team, who meets daily during the 5th hour to identify where our students are at, and to continue to monitor and track that progress is key. And I think all of our buildings have taken big steps, whether it's the problem-solving teams. At the lower levels, we use a different name in our building, but it's the same concept. We're looking at students, looking at the data, and figuring out how to continually support them.
And it's really looking to the whole child. I hear that a lot, but by interweaving the RTI academic piece with the RTI PBIS piece, and looking at the behavior and the behavioral interventions as well as the academic interventions and supports, are really trying to hit our students who have all sorts of diverse needs. And I think that's really been a huge piece in being able to talk that same language. And when we speak as administrators or teachers or anybody in the building, we're all speaking the same languages, and the students start to understand that as well, which I think has been...
Well, you know you're going somewhere when you're sitting in either a SAT meeting or an RTI meeting, and during the discussion, say an RTI meeting, they mention the SAT team, or they mention the instructional coach, or they mention the interventionist. It's no longer these individual things we have going on in the building that you know, are doing their own little things to try to help a child. It's now everybody is looking at the whole child together, and they communicate, and it's made a world difference for us.
Do you think our high school kids in particular feel that there are eyes on them? I mean, the kids who are struggling, do they feel that there are eyes on them and structures to help them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm cautious of how I would define eyes on them. I think they understand that there are people out there that will support them. And what we're trying to do is make it clearer how they get to those and who they, you know, where they can go if they need to find that support where it may not have been identified yet. But yeah, I think they do, absolutely. They know all these different types of things are going on. And the people in these teams are getting so involved in helping these kids in different ways. So I think it's out there.
Well, and I know one of the things our teams are very proud of is the fact that kids are self-selecting some of these interventions. They know what check in, check out is. And they're saying this is an intervention that would help me be more successful during the day. And that's something, you know, you have to sit back and just be happy about because they're recognizing the benefits of it. They're not seeing it as something that they have to do. They're seeing it as something they want to do to be more successful.
It's an established part of our culture.
Right,
Which
exactly.
is nice. I want to talk a little bit about math interventions. We do have a critical math class at the middle school, the intermediate school, and the high school. And just in time, too, it's kind of followed the same pattern as our critical reading course. But very, very excited to have this in place this year. We have 2 sections in the 7th grade and 2 sections in the 8th grade. We focus on fluency and mental math and problem solving, and then supporting the 7th and 8th grade curriculum too with that. And I can't say enough about the staff that's worked together for that, the feedback that they're giving parents, and getting the kids involved in their own goal setting and progress monitoring along the way. So they see themselves growing or seeing where they're not growing and that effort that needs to be put a little extra into that. So that's been very exciting at the middle school is to get CMC off the ground.
Kind of what we talked about here with all the PBIS, that really falls into our goal 3. We all have 3 goals lined up on our school improvement plans, and with everything you were hearing on PBIS fits that behavior with goal 3, but we also of course have a goal for reading and a goal for math. And again, when you read through the different goals we have, you can see, especially obviously my focus is elementary, but it just speaks so highly when you have the 3 elementaries that are unique in population but very uniform in what we are addressing, how we're meeting the needs, how we collaborate with the 3 elementaries to be consistent, because it's so important that we constantly focus on that, because as we hand them over to GIS, we don't want them to feel anything but a smooth transition as possible. So we continue to collaborate and look at those needs to keep that happening for us too.
Well, and you'll see through all our plans just how we're using data to drive all these decisions, to identify students for the intervention and different supports, be it reading, math, or behavior supports at this point.
I have to comment, it's so refreshing to see the school improvement plan evolving into my words here, student improvement plan. And the integration in that, it takes a functioning organization and coordination so that the kids can jump into the whirlwind of what's going on and feel welcome. And it's so refreshing to hear that they're looking for interventions because they want to succeed. And creating an environment that is welcoming to that is just where we want to be. So, hats off to.
I think what's interesting is, you know, even though we have a separate reading, a separate math, and a separate behavior goal, we were talking in our staff meeting today, there's a lot of things that seem a little repetitive with it, but our one goal is student learning and how all of these things work together. And so I think not only the consistency from building to building, but even the consistency between departments and plans and sites. Exciting.
And I love seeing you hear of some schools teaching to the test or trying to get AYP and grabbing the kids and making sure that happens. And that doesn't work because you don't have an organization that's functional in encouraging the growth of all students despite their diverse needs. So it's
Well, go ahead.
No, we're probably gonna say the same thing. And when you say that, talking about teaching the test or the state testing, I think that we, as administrators, we've talked about how valuable our local assessments are and how powerful they are to help us truly drill down and see what our students need. Not only, and not just because they're local assessments, because we can give them multiple times in a year, have multiple data points, be able to pull out pieces in order to determine what interventions our students need or what enrichment pieces our students need. And I think that's, it's exciting to hear you say that too, because I think that's where we see the most power is within our local assessments.
I'd love to be able to have more of that, hit the community or hit the communications that come out of the district so that they can see that we're not leaving anybody behind and making sure that we're inclusive in everything that we're trying to build. And it's great to see that literacy program start to see some early results in the lower grades, and it's the proverbial rat through the snake that's making its way.
See, it's also that, the fact that our district so values research-based. I mean, that's the key, is we're using a research-based curriculum. And then you take it a step further with our evaluation instrument, which is also research-based with the Danielson model, and then the training and the high expectations of what the administrators have went through before, but then really reviewed that professional development through the summer training, just reaffirms how important it is that we are out there walking through the rooms, we're doing the drop-ins, we are guiding that feedback very specifically that lines up with their evaluation, which lines up with their professional development, because it's a professional development framework in the end. So it's just kind of, I feel fortunate to have been through that, evolving with that. And it can't speak highly enough for what it means to young first-year teachers to walk into a process that's in place so solidly that way that guides their further development. It's a powerful tool, it's a powerful process that we went through to strengthen our own abilities.
Well, we've got teachers that are so focused on the students. They're the ones that are passionate about this, that are really driving the collaboration, the discussion, the focus on the students. I mean, CRC, CMC's success, because of the teachers that are providing these interventions, that are really focusing on what can I do differently to help these kids succeed. I mean, that's their ultimate goal every day, is what can I do to help them make that growth? Because they want to see that growth. They want to spend that time. They're dedicated to that.
I have two questions. One is about the data points that you said you had. Do those vary for the average student or those students who need more assistance? What are your data points? Just in general, and do you get more data points for kids who are struggling?
Well, in terms of, if we speak to reading, we have 3 universal screeners in here.
Is that the map?
It depends on the grade level.
Only for 4th grade up.
4th grade up is
map.
It's a map. And so, in kindergarten, early kindergarten is letter naming, fluency, sounds, and then at the end of the year, we'll start to get into DRA, which goes from the end of kindergarten through 3rd grade.
Twice a year for
Three, except for kindergarten, which is the end of the year. But I think in terms of students who are struggling, we do then when we progress monitor, when we are, bi-weekly checking on the students on their fluency or their comprehension, depending on what their deficit is. Then we do have more data points, and we can see, are we using the correct intervention? What's working, what's not? And after so many weeks, coming back to the problem-solving team or back to the team or with the literacy coach or the interventionist and saying, here's the progress I'm seeing or I'm not seeing, what do we do now?
And also at that team, you have special education.
That
And they are key,
How does special ed
the resources they bring to that table, and they're not there at that table to say, bring them to us. They're there to broaden our understanding of what can we go back in the room and continue to try as an intervention at this tier level And it's amazing when you see them sitting around that room, the wealth of the knowledge that comes from each individual, but collectively is so powerful. The teachers just walk away feeling, I think, relieved that there's something else to try, because that's just what they want to know is what else can I do? And to see that meeting a few weeks later, then they come back and be able to celebrate those successes or say, I need something else, something more. But it's a powerful think tank is what it is, of many, many resources all coming together to benefit each child individually at a time. And then further training as the coaches are in that room, further training. They may not have the answers at that time, but through listening and determining what else is needed for professional development, that is a benefit to everybody in the school, that professional development that comes from it.
It's really the collaboration piece is really what you touch on there. If you look at any of the successes we have on the front, none of those would be successful without the open collaboration about literacy or numeracy or PBIS, RTI, and that WPD piece is just one more avenue to have those collaboration conversations. And we're seeing so many wonderful things, and teachers sitting down and seeking out the coaches, or seeking out teachers on other grade levels, or even getting involved with the OTs and PTs to kind of take that avenue and finding what can we do, whose knowledge, experience, etc. can we pull together to really meet our kids where they're at and push them all forward.
And I think that's one of the biggest differences I've seen since our withdrawal from SASED is we used to be very isolated and these are your kids, these are my kids. And it's a true testament to this leadership team that you haven't heard that at all tonight. You haven't heard special ed, you haven't heard the different populations, because it is truly about all of our kids. It's not about who they are and what label they have, it's about what they need. And we really, think tank is a great way to put it, because I've never seen such a group of teachers really exhaust all resources, all avenues to really sell out for what a child needs.
Well, the model used to be, if a kid is struggling, I've got to figure that out myself as a teacher, because I teach in these four walls. God forbid I talk to anybody. I got to figure this out on my own. And if I couldn't figure it out, then, well, you need to go down the hall special ed. And, you know, that model, it no longer exists around here at all. People know that if I've got a struggling student, there are a whole bunch of different people and ways I can go to try to find this child some help. And, you know, I just remember all my years of teaching that that's what it was. It was, well, send them down to special ed. It's a place to go.
And it
It's a
doesn't
service.
mean that I don't know what I'm doing
Yeah.
or I'm doing something wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't have the
We have to
teacher
work
afraid to
together.
raise their hand for a resource. They recognize, I need to get this resource quickly, and
The
you
walls
don't
are
have to
gone.
have the answers.
Can I broaden it? We talked a little bit, a lot about it, in fact, about struggling students and all, but for all students, Jan suggested kind of expanding this for all students and kind of individualizing the student growth kind of goals for each student. What I'd like to hear in terms of your, from an administrative point of view, how do you see that might fit in with this also, this new metric for teacher evaluation kind of thing, and how do you envision evaluating teachers or supervising the goal setting, that goals are set for each student, not just the struggling students, but for the successful students and that whole body of average students, that they are getting appropriate kind of goals set for their own individual growth, and then how do you evaluate that the teacher is meeting those kind of goals at the end to be constructive with your evaluations with the teachers at the end of the year and
Mrs. Larson, do you want to hit on the joint
Well,
committee piece?
some of that's going to come from the BCA and the administrators coming together as a team and talking about what measures we're going to use, because that has to go through the joint committee. So, I mean, I think that will, I mean, we have a very good working relationship. And if we can't come to agreement, it goes 50-50. If we can, you know, if we can agree on something, it's 70-30. So, you know, it's to our advantage to do that. And when I did those 6 presentations in the buildings, they said there will be agreement. But I think, I mean, we have to look at what we currently do or where we're heading on what to measure, because there's common assessments that will measure. There's the map testing and how we're going to do that. That's why I think this training will be very beneficial on how to use that. We have a think tank of 30 people attending that, and it's beyond these people here. So, I mean, I think we're on the right path of how to use that and set student goals, because you can do student growth goals and individual goals with NWEA. I'm just going to plug that we'd like to see it at least go down to 3rd grade, but it's a very expensive test is the issue. So we have, you know, we have to figure out where we're going to go with that. But I mean, I know the elementary principals would like to see it get a little bit lower.
Is the 3 times a year, is that middle one as useful as, I mean, could you, I mean, is that necessary?
You have to pay, it's a yearly.
It's a yearly thing. It's not, it's
You don't
by the
pay any
number of
more.
students.
No, but I mean that the map testing,
Do
doing
you see
that
enough?
3 times a year, is there no, or is there a reason to maybe do that spring and fall, and then say, use that savings
I
to
think
push
we
it
want
down to?
as much.
No, it doesn't
You're
seem
not
like
saving-
that.
you're not
Pay by
saving.
any money.
And I think
It's by the number of
validity
students.
too, I think we see, you know, especially with just our 4th grade in the elementary being the first time they take the test. And we're looking at our fall numbers and we're saying, okay, we're having conversations with the teachers and the teachers saying, no way, either the child is showing so much more in the classroom or, you know, we know that this is one point in their time. We're not sure what happened to them before they came to school, or what happened, did they get a good night's sleep the night before, were they not feeling well? So we have to, you know, use it. I think that's why the winter and the spring, combining those 3 data points are really important. And I know just in the time that I spent too as instructional coach with Jill, that also really weighed heavily on determining and helping us understand a child and whether C or C was an option for them.
And we do look at summer regression too in the fall, because there are some students that don't read at all, and so over the summer. So we do
Dr.
look
Quetter,
at
one of the things you mentioned about what could be looked at the high school, Mr. Lee and Mrs. Larson kind of brought this to our attention, is the college and career readiness. If you look at the high school goals for this year, they weren't specifically ACT or PSAE related, although we still value those tests in a great way. But the college and career readiness piece is really what a lot of schools statewide and nationwide are looking at. And some of the ways that we feel that can occur are, we need to make sure that our students are taking the most rigorous courses possible. So some guided efforts within the guidance department, conversations led by me and Mr. Lee, to make sure that parents are aware of the tracking and sequencing that needs to occur with their students, and just conversations with the counselors in general when a student sits down with that one-on-one meeting to make sure that they're selecting a course that's going to prepare them. We've also talked a lot about prerequisites, especially for our higher level classes. And I mentioned in the AP report that some of our current prerequisites restrict our students from taking those courses, and we're starting to break down those walls. In fact, you're going to see, I'm predicting in December, when we present course offerings, some, not lessening the standard in any way, but providing another opportunity for a college prep student to take an AP class. For example, we have Honors Biology 2. We're moving that to AP Biology. And as I met with Mrs. Cordy, we talked about how do we get that regular college prep student who takes regular bio into that advanced level if he or she is ready to take it on. Same with AP US and AP European History. Right now, the prerequisite is you have to have a B- or better in Honors World History. Well, what if I took college prep history and got an A+? I got a 22 on my Explore test, and my RIT score was 250 for reading. They can't get in. And to me and to Mr. Lee, as we've talked about it, getting those students in those high-level courses or even advanced courses makes a lot of sense, but we've got to undo some historical patterns at the high school that have been there for a long time. And you know, our teachers are very proud of the curriculum and the rigor that we offer, and we want to continue to build on that. But I think it starts with making sure that our students are placed properly and taking the most rigorous courses that we can. We also talked about the articulation piece, and where we continue to look at more vertical and horizontal alignment with GMS specifically, to make sure that, you know, with Common Core algebra, let's say, students need to be prepared in 7th and 8th grade to have those algebra skill sets. So how does that affect what happens at 7th and 8th grade and then turn down into Dan's building and at the elementary levels? So, a big goal for us will be to continue to look at college and career readiness. But it's not just a high school piece. As we research some northern districts, college and career readiness starts 1st and 2nd grade. And they have an 8-step, many schools have 9-step plans as to what parents can do early on in the careers to help get to where they want to go, whether it's college, the military, an internship. So we're excited about that opportunity to look at all of our students.
I think one of the things you talked about, Chris, was, you know, opening those doors a little bit and looking at multiple data points. And instead of just looking at one score to determine if a child needs an intervention, our matrices now have as many that we can actually fit on there now. And we're not only looking at the kids that need remedial assistance, but I know we've had some good discussions of the kids that are at the top of there. What classes are they taking? I know that there's some good research with the RIT scores that are course ending. If a student is at this level, they are capable of doing well in this course. So we want to look at both sides, but again, not just one point, but multiple data points, so that you know, a student has a bad day on one test, one area won't pull them down. And then once we have that universal screening, then really dive into it more deeply in terms of, okay, this score is a lot higher than this, why, and so forth. So there's a lot of good conversations that go on once you have that screener done for everybody. But again, multiple data points, it's been very successful so far.
And I think those conversations, part of what you were asking Dr. Pointer was, how are we preparing teachers for that point in time as well? And I think these conversations on how are we using the data, how can we use it, getting them comfortable to able to look at it, talk about what to change to the students in their classroom, what do they need to do instructionally to move them from point A to point B. I know there's also a lot of teachers too who are starting to do individual goal setting within their classroom. So as we're having more and more of these conversations, I think by the time that we get to this point in 2016 with it being, you know, student growth goals, that we as a district too have prepared the teachers to be able to look at the data and talk the data and be able to determine how to use that too.
Because I think the trick would be, I mean, because I just think a young teacher would be concerned that all this evaluation change is going to be punitive, you know, and the trick is going to be to make it constructive for everybody, constructive for each kid, and then constructive for the teachers too, especially the younger teachers or the teachers who may need some, you know, more intervention to make it constructive for everybody. And that's going to be, I think, as administrators, that's really going to be the art of trying to come up with the whole system, or at least put it together.
That's the battle right now, because that's not the way they're looking at it.
Right. No,
In the first initial shot of what they're going to be looking at in a couple of years.
This may be a segue into technology, but how do you keep track of all these data points for each child?
Chad's actually, we actually have,
Yeah.
Chad is exploring some options for that, because he's heard us talk about it over and over, that we really need something that's very user-friendly and can take all of this and just, you know, kind of a no-brainer, here's what a child's, you know, picture looks like, almost a profile, but he also wants to incorporate, he's looking at Pearson potentially, or, you know, some other solutions, but they could have the dashboard attached to it too, where you can, you know, see the dashboard of the district, but then, you know, you can, as you drill down, you can look into the individual child. So there are lots of solutions out there that are starting to do those kinds of things in a very user-friendly way, and that's what he's kind of been exploring for us, which is great.
Do the teachers have access to the, I mean, I would think obviously
They do,
to
yeah.
their own students, but.
They do. We try to put a lot of it in Skyward, but then it's just not as user-friendly. You know, it's all there for them as much as we can put in there, but it's, you know, trying to make it even more user-friendly is our next step.
We've been working on it for a couple of years, and just trying to get it, like she said, user-friendly, where you open it up, that picture's clear.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just
Because they don't have time.
hodgepodge numbers
Yep.
here, and then the time is a major.
So a teacher that maybe isn't as savvy in technology, are they still able to manage all that information?
Yeah, because they're getting a lot of professional development during the.
I mean, fourth grade on up with the map, with the training they're getting, the guidance that they can pull for their own class with the map information provides a lot of helpful feedback, and not just for the teacher, but for the parents also.
So I was gonna ask for the younger grades in particular.
For the parents, for the child.
How to involve them in this whole
Those
process.
reports go home 3 times. And the other thing is K-8, I know the high school's working on it because Jim and Chris and I have talked, but K-8, they also have data walls. I mean, it's very confidential and under lock and key, but there's data walls of all the students.
Meaning what?
That you have, every student has a data card, and you have a data wall on here's who needs support.
In each classroom?
No,
No.
this is a private room, that it's
Oh.
either a coach's room or a conference room that's under lock and key, but you've got such confidential information.
Great big pocket charts.
Yeah.
Huge.
Our coaches were very good about figuring out a way to display that. So you can walk in and look at the data, and this is what it says.
And I think that's one area we've really improved at, is we've always done a fabulous job of collecting data, but then interpreting it and analyzing it and carrying it in and changing instruction.
Creating interventions.
That's kind of where we had a
for
gap,
that,
and I really
yeah.
see our specialists, our coaches, our interventionists, our psychologists, social workers, and even our leaders sitting at the table really take us in a different direction and evolve into using the data rather than just collecting it.
Yeah, my favorite question is, so what?
Yeah.
Here's the data, now so what? So what do we do with it? You know, if we don't, if we're not using it,
Yeah.
then it's not doing us any good.
Well, what's nice about that too is I think the overall umbrella of this whole conversation is that we have the data that tells us what exactly a child needs for interventions. And the nice part about the interventions are they allow us to eliminate the special ed is a place kind of philosophy, because you don't need to do that when you have interventions in place. It doesn't have to be a place and somebody else's issue. It's everyone's, you know, everyone is going to solve together. But it also allows us to do things like what the high school is talking about with eliminating prerequisites. If you have interventions in place, you can put kids in higher courses than you thought may be possible because you have an intervention in place in case someone is struggling. So you don't have to, you know, almost, what their fear always was at the high school was, you know, I'm afraid that you're going to water down my curriculum. You know, I have such high regard for the rigor in my class, and if you put a student in here who's struggling, I'm going to have to slow down and I'm going to have to, you know, support them. But if you don't have that because you have interventions in place for somebody to go to a tutor or an interventionist or somebody else who's going to support them, then you can truly put them in a course that may be a little bit more difficult. And we all know, the research says if they're in that class, they're going to, at least you'd rather have a student in a class getting a C in a higher level course than getting an A in a lower level course because they have that exposure. So we know that, and it's just a matter of letting teachers feel comfortable with it. And I think the interventions do that. Over time, they get used to the fact that somebody's going to help if I, you know,
Well,
if
it
a
goes
student
back to
struggles.
what Dan was saying about, you know, kids can realize themselves what they need. And, you know, as that,
Ask for the support.
as that process and model grows, I think you'll find more kids themselves that will challenge themselves because they know, you know, I've got these different supports I can't call upon, or I know how to help myself based on what I've learned in supports over the years. That I hope it's just an influence of these different things that will get kids to automatically just challenge themselves and take more rigorous courses when they get to high school.
And I think, Jim, I think it goes a step further than Dan. I think it goes back to what Rick said about an inclusive education.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that starts at the top as a philosophy with us as a district. We can go back to the strategic plan, but ultimately it's about the way we look at everything. And as a community, we want to be inclusive. We want to teach kids self-advocacy. We want to teach them the skills to be ready for career in college. And it starts systemically as a district with a plan from the beginning.
We've been hearing lots and lots of good things, and it's really nice to see that progression. But what is it that is not going well that we can help with?
I think when we get the data collection, right now, it's not that it's not going well, but to get our data in, it's data
Cumbersome.
entry and very cumbersome. But, I mean, we have structures in place with the time. And Kara, my wonderful intern this year, has been doing a lot of data entry and analysis, which
It's
is...
kind of like when you go to the doctor's office and step in for a checkup and they pull up the laptop with your chart. You can see all your data points, your BP, your sugar levels, your height, your weight, bam, 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 when you step in. We want to get to the point where you can pull up Skyward or Pearson or whatever it is, and you can see a snapshot of that student and know exactly what he or she has been through from pre-K on up, what they've done well in, what they need support in, maybe some family dynamics that can help support the student. We're getting there. We have some of those pieces in Skyward, ACT, PSAE, MAP, but there are other components that, as Carrie and Jill said.
And the cool thing is teachers starting to ask for that stuff. And that didn't happen before. So.
But see, that's the neat thing, if the teacher could say, all right, this is where you're at, I mean, if we got that, and this is where we want you to get by the end, or even counselors too, this is where you're at as a freshman, and this is where I think if we work really hard, we can get you to as a senior if we, you know. Yeah.
And if they say, well, I want to take, I want to go down a track, well, don't make that an easy solution. Make that a challenging one. No, you really think you need to take this, and get the parent involved up front to say, hey, the more rigorous course you can take, the more successful the data says you're going to be when you step out of Glenwood.
Well, Chris put his hand up in the air. He's showing that longitudinal data over time. I mean, you can see.
You want to see this.
Right.
Well, if you believe the ACT stuff, I mean, for that college, ready to college and workplace, you know, prepared, that metric, they say, to be success, if you want a kid successful at that, the more rigorous he's taken up to that point,
sure,
the more chance they've got of being in that group. Now, the trick is it doesn't just start with high school, as you guys know, it really starts with middle school and grade school.
It sounds like Chad, and you guys are working on that.
Yeah, we're working on it, yeah. We're gonna meet
Chad and Jill have been exploring some options.
But that stuff is not easy. Even in medicine, it's not easy.
Well, and we don't want to pull the trigger until we are sure that it's the one we want, because we don't want people to be frustrated that, you know,
So do you
with
have
the
some
solution.
That would be a
not
good-
to put you on the spot, but now
Oh,
you're
no.
still investigating?
We're still just, yeah. I mean, there's companies out there. I mean, we were at conferences and
Yeah.
there were reps chasing us down the hallway.
And they all make it sound good.
Yes, they
Yeah,
do.
they do.
But the last thing
No
you
problem.
want
It
is
sounds so simple
a counselor
we use-
spending hours or a teacher spending
Well, see, we had
hours trying to get
purchased,
stuff in.
when I first took this, Joe's position, we purchased a program called SAM. I don't know if you all remember that, from SDS. And we used SDS as our demographic system then. And we purchased this program, and it sounded wonderful. Same thing, you know, it was, oh, it can do all of these things. You can put all of the, you know, the information in. Well, it was fine for somebody who had spent hours and hours and hours learning it, which I had. And then you got to a level of somebody who's busy, and you know, and they just didn't have time to figure out what was in there and how to disaggregate it and what it looked like. And it was just so cumbersome. So we, you know, tossed it aside, and it was just ended up being a big frustration for everybody. So we want to take our time and really make sure we get the right one that's really going to make it useful for you as well, because of that dashboard piece that, you know, we think we can find a solution that gives you exactly what you're looking for in terms of a picture of district performance. And then as you drill down into specific teacher or principal level, and then teacher level, and then parent level, you know, as you drill more, your login tells, you know, the system how far you can drill down to a child's individual information. So there are some out there, it's just finding the right one.
Well, there's a lot of push because of the 2016 implementation date, so.
Right, they're all getting on board with it.
Yeah, they're all starting to vie for that.
So at III, we will be investigating what.
I just wish, Linda, I could answer that. We don't have enough time during the week with our teachers. I mean, we really don't. The hour, I mean, I just had a meeting with the elementary principals on something that the interventionist brought to my attention, and we can't even fit it in because the weekly professional development is so jam-packed. There's not enough time with staff, so I wish it was a simple solution, but time is very, very valuable. And the collaboration is fabulous when you walk the buildings during WFT time across the board. I mean, they're communicating. There are no walls anymore.
So you're really monitoring that?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They sign in and they're out there and
Well, we're at the
they're
meetings.
involved. So. Other questions?
So all you need is technology, huh? That's it?
Time. 40-hour day. Then I guess on time, and I know Jill mentioned it, and I know that this is part of of budget, I know we're in tight times, but honestly, at the third grade level, in order to, or even lower, in order to have
We can
math.
take it second grade.
In second grade. Betsy, do you mind pulling up my, finding my third grade data?
Would you
We
be
had some
asking for
power-
math, the same 3 over the course of the year?
Mhm. And I think that we had a big aha moment today when we were at the staff meeting, and we looked at our third grade data from last fall. So last fall, 2011, was a DRA score, is what we took as our assessment. Spring was DRA, and then this fall was the same group of students who took math. And we had a conversation today at our staff meeting. We looked at, okay, we had 19% or 18% of our students falling below, between the 10th and the 25th percentile. In the spring, we had 11% below the 10th percentile, and now all of a sudden this fall, we have 3% and 4%. And I said, that doesn't fall with, go kind of jive with our summer gap going on, and teachers saw it right away. How much more?
And you can open all 3 elementaries and you have that
Same.
same.
And it
can happen.
brings for some powerful conversation, because one of the things with math is not only can we drill down into 4 different strands of reading to see where the deficit is, but also it takes out the time limit piece. It also takes away the fluency piece, which DRA is a combination of a comprehension piece and a fluency piece. If a child does not pass a fluency piece, we automatically bring that child down to the next DRA level, regardless of their comprehension. And so that's where teachers are having powerful conversations with the assessments we're using now, because we can talk, this child is a strong comprehender, but struggling fluency-wise. They know what materials they really need to be using, but when we look at the data, it really truly isn't reflecting all of what we're seeing with our kiddos.
With math, it also drills down deeper for the teacher individually, for the child, what you need to work on. I mean, it really breaks it way down, so they can see what they need to work on. Is what, 4th grade was sharing with 3rd grade.
It will group students for you based on different strands. It will, depending on where their risk scores in that strand, suggestions geared specifically for that level.
Yes.
Were you asking to switch from math to DRA, or are you asking for both math and DRA?
Wanting to bring math down. Because we have a fluency piece, we could still continue to assess
But
students.
then you would
with
eliminate the
fluency.
DRA in 3rd grade.
It takes out the subjectivity too.
It does, it takes
With
out
the scoring of the DRA.
Totally the subjectivity out of it.
It gives you
Because
another.
the teachers is it just the teacher, or do parents who are also doing DRA?
Just the
Teachers
teachers.
only.
Did you used to parents, did we used to parents?
No.
Parents get the DRA
They get the DRA.
Right.
But they did it to assess.
And as I recall, that DRA test is a lot more involved.
It is very involved.
More time.
Time, time away from,
It's one-on-one.
It's one-on-one. It has to be one-on-one.
The math test is about $13 a student.
But we're not saving anything, we're not saving anything.
Well,
Much,
DRA is
much,
just you get
much.
some cost.
Right.
Subs.
Not saving much.
But
Krista,
it's more time out of the classroom. The teacher has a lot of time out of the
For
classroom.
DRA,
Yes.
absolutely.
And math, you do it on a computer?
We do it on a computer, the teacher actually can administer it to the entire class
During the
at one time. We
At one
schedule the
time.
time so that they're in there. And also they have instant feedback about their student, right as soon as a student, and they can record the information, and then as well as later print off reports if they've been uploaded, but they have that instant information as well. Where a DRA, not only do they have the time that it takes to administer it, and then the scoring that it takes beyond that, because especially when you get to a 3rd grade level, student written responses that they have to go through and score.
But your map also gives you math.
Yes,
How young a grade is math used?
Goes down to
kindergarten.
It goes to kindergarten, but I've got a district's given me feedback that they would not recommend it. I would go to 3rd. I don't think I'd go any lower than 3rd at this point.
The early years in math has not had as much research or usage than the 3rd through 4th grade.
And Chris is right, the cost is for 3 tests. And
Yeah.
There's
it's
not
just
an
by-
option to
it's-
say 2
no.
or.
It's
Yeah,
by
it's
flat
13.
rate per student.
All
It's a
the
flat
time.
rate. It's
It-
how many kids are tested.
$13.95.
Is there a way to upload the technology, those results into our programs here? Instead of
It gets a
we're
little
inviting
harder.
kind of data entry?
Just the base, we currently have the Lexile score or a RIT score within Skyward, which would give
Yeah,
you
can upload
a
that.
brief snapshot.
Brief.
It's not going to get into the vocabulary and
Won't get
the
into
literary
some
works.
scores.
It's not a breakdown.
The way to get into that is
Where do you
to
want it?
have our teachers get into the NWEA site. As Jill mentioned, we have a training Wednesday where we've got 30 people coming to further explore those options. Not quite
But I
able to
think,
get it
yeah,
all into
the
Skyward.
gist of the concern is that, but then you still got teachers going to this and
Right.
and then going
Exactly.
to this and,
Correct.
you know.
Looking for
It's not
integration.
centralized.
Right.
I think, could you work up some information as to how much it would cost
Yeah, we
to do that?
we could do that.
Because if you look at the DRA for a third grade, how many days does it take for a teacher
We
to do the
could see
DRA?
what time
Yeah.
lost
Yeah.
versus.
They're out usually at least each teacher out at least a full day, and then if they don't get through their whole class, then they use, you know, either guided reading time or wing time or other time to make sure they have all their students tested. And
We have-
then that doesn't include, you know, how.
We have analyzed it in the past, and it's not a wash. It's definitely expensive,
I
but
think is,
it's a matter
like
of.
Linda's saying, let's take a look at it, and
Yeah.
if there's something that's gonna help our students, if it costs a little bit more, I mean, this board has committed to early childhood, no matter, you know, what the cost was on that, and I shouldn't say no matter what the cost was, but within reason. But, you know, I
Write
mean,
it
we've committed to, but if there's a way that we can, if something's gonna help our students more, and it is gonna cost a little bit more, it's more valuable to the district than something that's not, you know, that's not doing the job.
Especially.
Because you can actually do the money on the substitute teacher.
We did, yeah.
But you can't put a cost to the
Right.
loss of instruction
Right,
time
you could,
Right.
that goes on.
you could say, well, that keeps the teacher in the classroom more.
Yeah.
Or even-
Powerful.
And more information,
I
really.
was saying you're also doing the math side of it, so
Mhm.
also.
Yes,
because you don't have a math.
Right, don't have any math, with an MComp and MCAP, but this gives us a lot more information about the newer students.
Besides what two did you say?
MComp and MCAP,
That's
we're using
just-
for Ames Web that we're using for
Fluency measures.
for math.
They're not as effective as the.
Doesn't give us that much.
Not as much detail.
Which is less stressful for the kids? Is math stressful for the kids to take?
I think math is stressful, but I think our kids have gotten better with being able to handle that. And I'll be honest with you, when I talk to other districts that do the math testing, when we go to the Common Core testing, which is going to all be on a computer, our kids are ready. That's a snap.
When they get to high school, and we have
Yeah.
ninth graders take, they've
Yeah,
done it for
it's-
4 years,
there's
they
no
know
transition.
they know the
Yeah.
drill, they know it's somewhat
They
high
know
stakes.
They know it's high stakes. They take it
They want to do
seriously.
well.
Are
But
there
we-
any grants available for math?
No.
Not for us.
But we have a really good relationship more and more with NWEA of, you know, we're gonna host a regional
NWEA
training.
is
Yeah, it's MAP, that's the
Yeah.
company, Northwestern.
West.
But we're gonna host a regional training in March or April. They've asked, you know, they've contacted me, and they said we can do that, so.
Could we be a pilot school for third grade?
Well, and we tried to get, we did get some deduction.
We can charge a fee.
Linda's on the negotiating team.
I'm trying.
$13.50 whoever comes to our training.
I think the only thing I would
like
ask from
that.
the board is that we do look at data so much that data's gonna drive some of our staffing decisions in the future. And so, you know, if we say, hey, this is what the data's telling us, we're gonna need to add here and maybe not here, those are some of the tough conversations that we as leaders are gonna have to have.
Well, and with teacher evaluation being
Absolutely.
25% of it, student achievement, I mean, I think we owe it to our teachers to make sure that we have a good technology system
Right.
that isn't hit and miss.
Reliable and valid
Right.
data, not
Mhm.
just,
That's
you
huge.
know, numbers.
Yeah. And time, I don't know what we could do. No idea.
I know they struggle. I mean, it's a struggle to get all those meetings to fit in.
Okay.
So. Any other questions?
I have a question about Common Core, mostly for the middle school, but it also pertains to GIS too. We kind of had an effort over the last 10 years of kind of accelerating some kids in math that could handle it to some, without kind of artificial constraints, in terms of the grade level you're at. For the advanced kids, we had a few even seventh graders that were taking algebra. The Common Core, in my understanding, is essentially kind of puts algebra as a freshman in high school, but I mean there is, I assume we will continue to push for the kids who are ready for algebra in 8th grade to take it in 8th grade, and even for 7th grade, but that's the gist of my question. How are we kind of adopting that philosophy to the Common Core, or have we considered that
Mrs. Kimball keeps that in mind.
Yeah, I think right now we're working on aligning the alignment of the curriculum, and then even within that, looking at what individual students' needs are. We don't want to hold any student back. We just want to make sure that they have the depth and understanding before they move forward with things.
And the Common Core will help that.
Absolutely.
And we use those data points to establish those 5th graders who need to be in 6th grade math, and then pre-algebra and the algebra. And we still have, groups of 22, 25 going into geometry their 8th grade year. I mean, we still have that going, very, very strong.
And I know we looked at those course ending scores, the RIT scores, and like, okay, wow, why aren't these kids in this higher level class? And so, again, good discussions, but again, knowing that that's one data point. A lot of it is choice too, but how can we encourage kids, more kids, to get into those higher level classes if they're ready for it, and showing them what the importance of that is.
Well, and then also having something for them when they top out. You don't want them topping out as a sophomore.
We're looking at that.
Because we've talked about that too. The idea is, that's just my son pleaded with me in calculus. I mean, the idea is not to get out of 4 years of math in high school, regardless of how advanced you are.
Thinking about
And that's why having more and more data is helpful, because then we can look at trends, see that these kids are on that growth pattern, and are going to be ready, be successful in those classes. So that.
Anything else? Jill, anything? Principal, anything else? I like Rick's thing on our student improvement plans here, because basically it's all, it is all for the students, and in the continuity now, and I know it hasn't been that many years ago where we had different objectives at different elementary schools, and the continuity now is there, that it's the same thing across all 3 elementary schools. Because once they get in the 4th or in the 5th grade, I mean, it's all got to come together. They have to know the same things when they get to the intermediate school, and I think that's been great strides over the last several years to bring that all together. So, Carrie and Jill have been heavily involved in that. So,
And
We
I
try to
just want
keep
to
that
make a personal
constant.
comment. You guys, not 40 pages.
We used
Yeah.
to have
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's coming back.
It's coming
back.
back.
Rising star.
That's what we're going back
It's gonna bring that back.
Create a new template.
Unfortunately, we're gonna have to go
Because of
No, because the rising stars are required by the state of Illinois, so
Keep the subjects.
I will try.
Keep the largest for
We'll keep our reports to
That's
you.
for fonts.
Quick.
yes.
Yeah, we
Are
could
you-
do
Little
a summary,
fonts?
to you.
Yeah, big fonts.
Executive summary would be great. That's exactly what we need.
Yeah, we used to have to write the size of the district, how many, square miles, and we wrote all
Oh,
that
yeah.
stuff in there, remember? The good old
They all
days.
tried to cut
Community.
paste.
See, it didn't change from year to year.
No,
The
we
size
just
of the
copy and
district
paste it.
hasn't changed.
But
Nobody wanted to
Jim's
read
point
that.
is very apropos, because when my kids started in way back when, I mean, the Chatham had one grade school with all the classes, and you've gone from 1 to 2 grade schools to 3. 15, 20 years, there might be a 4th grade school, I mean, assuming we keep growing, I mean, it is important to try to keep it grade level rather than building specific, and I would also compliment you too. It seems like we've done very, very good job of integrating grade level and also crossing the boundaries. I mean, Jill will tell you back when my kids went from 8th grade to freshman, we had a conversation with the middle school principal. There isn't more tie-in between the freshman teachers and the 8th grade curriculum, but you guys have done a wonderful job the last 5-10 years of bringing a lot of that together.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Well, with no other questions or comments by anybody, then I would need a motion then to approve the individual school improvement plans as presented this evening.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Lisa, a second, please. Thank you, John. And that's call roll, please.
Clutter,
Yes.
Petermeyer,
Yes.
Weitzel,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Kopp,
Yes.
Harlan,
Yes.
Reeses.
Yes. All right, next item is communications, a little roundtable discussion here. Was there anything, John, did you want to?
We're going to talk about CACC, but we'll talk about it
Put it on the agenda for next meeting.
Next meeting, okay.
Because we're gonna get some information.
And does it have to do with what the articles that have come out recently?
Well, to some extent, or there's some concern how much 186 financial troubles will maybe have to
Impact.
talking
Yeah.
about how far back they may pull from CACC. This kind of the concerns we have over there.
Okay, well, that's for the November board meeting? Okay. Carrie, nothing else?
No, that's
Okay.
great.
And then we added a little 7.3 up here. We've got that future board meeting dates. And Carrie and I talked about this, and we've got so many things going on month to month that I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew, you know, for the next month or so what we've got coming up. And now we've got it for 2 months, but you know, at board meetings, again, a special board meeting there for transportation in January, and make sure that everybody has those on their calendar so that we've
There's
all
no
got that.
snowstorm.
Right.
It's transportation, that's not a problem, we just have Jim come around and pick us up, bring us
There you
over.
go. So, okay. And then the last item on the communications, opportunity for visitors to address the board concerning any topic. Anybody wish to address the board? Okay.
Actually, may I make a comment?
Sure. You identify yourself?
I actually had a unsuccessful experience about trying to get my son from, not unsuccessful, but we didn't have enough tools to evaluate whether or not this would be a good decision. He was in regular biology in 9th grade and did very well. And then we wanted to look at this situation of maybe bumping up to honors biology. And it was very clear that what we needed, but what we did not have available, was to take the 9th grade biology syllabus and compare that, the regular class, and compare that to the honors biology syllabus and see what areas Jay needed to work on over the summertime. And it was not successful because the course curriculum for AP biology was changing. It was this was the first year that and I had a very nice conversation with Mrs. Cordy. I mean, she was very helpful, gave us the information, and we determined, that is to say my husband and I determined, that we did not have enough comfort about what the AP biology curriculum would be. And so, you know, this was an unusual year, I would agree. But I think that if you are encouraging students to move on up, then you have to say, okay, here's what you need to do. And you need to have the textbooks available to them. I mean, you know, step one is if you want to, you know, work on it over the summer, which Jay said he would. Of course, who knows really if that was the case, but you know, you have to make it easy for the parents, and so as a consequence, Jay's biology teacher said that Jay's bored. I mean, there's just a huge gap here between, so I'm just saying it's very good to, you know, promote this to the highest level, but you don't have the structure yet. I mean, and you know, it may well be that changing the prerequisites is, you know, a good idea. I don't know, but it sounds great in theory, but unless you have the structure there to help the student and the parent figure it out, it's not going to work. Because Mrs. Cordy did say that about 20% of the kids from like the regular biology course that move to the honors course, one, they're not used to the clip, the pace at which it goes. And two, you know, they're, if you're going to promote that, then as you say, you have to have some support for those kids, because it's very intimidating to go from regular biology and do very, very well, and then, you know, jump up to honors. So we, for all those reasons, one is we couldn't get a handle of what needed to be worked on over the summer. And so, you know, it's been a very disappointing year, because maybe in retrospect he did belong in the honors biology. I mean, when the teacher says your son is really bored, he's interested in the subject, but he's bored, you know, that's disappointing to hear. So I don't know how you're going to do it, but I mean, I do think this is something the guidance counselors have, you know, if you think you're going to do it in the spring, you have to work on it over the summer. You just cannot expect a student to hop right into honors, and there's none of that transition. I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience. So, I mean, I think it's good. I just think you may have more work and more communication needed. And one idea is, okay, get the syllabi in a notebook, okay, by department. And, you know, you're going to have the syllabi from the 9th grade honors and the 9th grade regular. And I'm not even sure they use the same textbook. Then you got to have the textbooks on hand so you can sort of figure out, okay. And I think some of that is the guidance counselor